Nancy, do you have sound? You can still hear me. Are you trying to call in still? Yeah.
We'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then if we can't get that connection, you guys can obviously text. So if there's a vote or something, she could text you the vote.
Mhm.
Would that work?
Mhm. And she can, yeah, we'll do that. But
Okay.
we're good.
All right. Well, let's start this meeting. It's 6:47. This is the February 8th, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency. I'll remind everybody that we are commissioners of the, what is it?
Directors.
Directors, that's right, directors. I've worked too many meetings. Anyway, we're all directors in the Urban Renewal Agency, and we're going to take the audit report for the last 6 months and year, well, for the last year, but want to make sure that we've got everything going. It looks like we do have some kind of rough communication with Nancy Bell, so I'll ask Sammy to call roll.
Okay, so we have Director Smith
Here.
and Director Alexander is present. Director Bell is present. Director Blaine will be joining us in a little bit. He may be late. Director Fox is present. Director Lehman is present, and Director McConnell is present. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. I want to remind everybody this meeting is being held via webinar with an audio and video recording. To participate in this meeting, you must have registered with the city prior to the meeting. Agenda review, anything, Sammy?
There are no changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay. And do we have any citizen testimony for Urban Renewal Agency?
We do not.
All right, then we'll move right into the audit presentation by our auditor from Umpqua Valley Financial, Steve Tusher. I'm afraid of that.
You did good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve, welcome again. And it's all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor / Director. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to do this by Zoom. The challenges that we all face with this technology stuff, I can imagine that Nancy, you're probably stressed out to the max just trying to connect in whatever way. And Sammy's doing everything she can. And that's kind of what we struggle with somewhat with these audits, trying to do them as remotely as we can also. Although I will have to say that everything went really well this year in that regard. The URA, as you well know, is a rather small organization and very little activity really going on. The primary transaction is the transfer of most of the property tax money over to the city to pay down the debt that's related to the activities. And so there wasn't a lot for us to really examine. We do need to record all of our understandings of internal control and various different compliance issues, but it's a fairly simple operation for us to do that. And of course, the URA is considered a component unit of the city, so a lot of our work overlaps there. But if you read the report on page 1A and 1B, you'll see that we indicate that these financial statements are without material misstatement, and that's our primary purpose in performing audit work. There are many other things with Oregon municipalities and other auditing standards that we have to do that relate to internal controls and relate to various different compliance issues with the state, like budget compliance with Oregon budget law and money management, all those kinds of things that are reported on the very last page of each of the audit reports. We also indicate in that report for the URA that there were no compliance issues there. I could talk and talk and talk about what we do for an audit. I could go over every line in this audit report in about 5 minutes, but what I would like to do is just ask if there are any questions at this point and try to address those. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address those now.
Councillor Fox or Director Fox.
I guess this goes for both reports. I'm not going to ask it twice, but since there was no management letter, I presume there was no significant deficiencies nor material weaknesses. Were there any suggestions for improvement of internal controls?
There were no significant deficiencies or material deficiencies in our assessment for the URA. There are always things that can be improved on with internal controls, but they generally require more staff. Not that the city doesn't have, or the URA doesn't have adequate staff for most separation of duties. But some of the issues that we will talk about with the city had to do with the accounting for full accrual issues and the relative challenge that we face with independence in doing some of those full accrual journal entries, like how the refinancing debt was managed and all of that in terms of the accounting for that. But for the URA, there's such little activity here that internal control is certainly not an issue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from directors? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the audit as presented.
I move that we accept the audit of the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Coburg for the year ending June 30th, 2021, as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Fox, Director Fox. And looks like Director Alexander has seconded. So there's a motion by Director Fox and a second by Director Alexander to accept the annual financial report through June 30th, 2021 as presented. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand in front of the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, directors, and thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Finance report from Tim. There he is.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Tim.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is the URA 6-month review. Not much goes on in the first 6 months in the URA. We did write one check for $43.91. That was for the Government Ethics Commission that we have to do that every year. Our cash balance is $392,919 as of December 31st, which is $14,231 less than the same time last year. We have received $353,313 in taxes, which is about 87% of our budget. At the same time last year, we had received 91% of our budget. The taxes are a little bit behind this year, I believe. That's really all I have to report on the URA. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from directors? Councillor Lehman.
So are we just talking about, are we talking about the full financial report? Any questions on that? Or are we talking specifically about the URA?
The URA.
Okay.
The financial report on the URA packet, page 34, is his administrative start. Any questions from directors on the financial report? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have the minutes from the June 8th, 2021 Urban Renewal Agency. Is there any request for changes or edits to the draft minutes? Hearing and seeing none, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Director Fox and a second by Director McConnell to approve the consent agenda, which is the June 8th, 2021 URA minutes. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand in front of the camera. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, directors. Are there any comments regarding the URA from directors before we close the meeting? I will close this meeting at 6:58. We have a 2-minute break. We'll start our city council meeting at 7 o'clock.
We are getting closer for Nancy. I think it's something with her iPad that has.
Well, one of the things I'll share with everybody is Andy, our IT guy, keeps reminding me to shut our devices off at least once a week completely so it will update and not have these little issues come up. And I've had it on my computer. Fortunately, it's been able to be fixed by relogging in. Who's echoing?
Unmute. It looks like we have Nancy and she's just shut everything off and we have sound. Nancy, do you hear us?
Mm-hmm.
And we hear you.
Right.
Great. I'm gonna go ahead and change your name real quick.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Way to go, ladies. Overcome the technological hurdles.
Can you hear me?
Yes. All right.
Oh, that made me sweat.
You did
Glad to have
good.
you back as a whole person or a two-dimensional person anyway. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I will now call the meeting, the February 8th, 2022 City Council meeting to order, 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held via webinar with audio and video recording. To participate in this meeting, you must have registered with the city prior to the meeting. Presenters and members of the public joining by Zoom, please mute your microphone and shut off your cameras at this time. When called on to speak or to provide a presentation, unmute yourself and you may turn your camera back on during your presentation. Sammy, the Pledge of Allegiance, and everybody please mute during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sammy. Roll call, please.
Oh, stop sharing. Thank you. So we have Mayor Smith, Counselor Lehman, Counselor McConnell, Counselor Fox, Counselor Alexander, Counselor Bell.
Yep.
We do have a quorum. And as I said earlier, Counselor Blaine will be joining us a few minutes late tonight.
Thank you, Sammy. Mayor's comments. I just want to share a couple of pieces of information. I've been working really hard on the transportation issues and regional aspect of how Coburg's transportation issues are really regional issues, and we have minimal control over a lot of those issues, but except to try and get the regional partners involved. And I know Ann and Megan and myself have been, and Councillor Fox have been working with our respective committees that we go to. Councillor Fox, Lane Act, I'm on the Metropolitan Policy Council Committee, and Megan and Ann providing great staff support for us to get the message out to other agencies to help us with getting some transportation problems fixed in Coburg that Coburg alone can't do. I was recently, this week, as a matter of fact, appointed to the Local Officials Advisory Council to the Department of Lands, DLCD and LCDC for advisory meetings with the commission when they set policies and look at rules and the effects of planning requirements on local governments. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a quarterly meeting. I'm sure I'm going to add to my reading list now that I'm on this committee, but looking forward to hopefully having some input from small towns into how the Oregon planning functions are going forward. And with that, I'd like to move forward with a presentation of the Employee of the Year. Where'd Sammy go? She's hiding.
Yeah, here we go.
Ann. Ann, take it away.
Yes, I'm here. Sammy's supposed to put up a photo.
I'm gonna do that here.
So it is customary in the city of Coburg for the city administrator to recognize an outstanding contribution from the city employee annually during the state of the city. That was delayed till now. The Employee of the Year exemplifies the values of the city of the Coburg staff by providing outstanding leadership and customer service, not just to the Coburg customers, but to their fellow teammates in every department of the city. This year, it is my honor to bestow this award on Sammy Egbert. Every business, no matter how large or small, needs a very strong hub. And that hub makes the managers and owners of businesses look good, but also helps us to be successful in our jobs. And Sammy is that hub for Coburg. As our city recorder and our business office manager over the last 2 years, she's made it look smooth. It's been some very difficult times. She's continued to achieve excellence in how she has supported the staff and the city council. She's worked hard to plan and implement the changes and the equipment that has made it possible for us to continue our public meetings with the highest form of technology and live streaming. She's supported hundreds of meetings, council, planning commission, citizen committees, ever-changing guidelines and mandates. She has supported the staff. We've worked through many complex projects this year that need to be brought to council in the form of resolutions, ordinance, and contracts. Her attitude of support, commitment, and leadership to the city of Coburg has been flawless over the last year. And that has been through some extremely challenged times. The city of Coburg is a better place because Sammy Egbert is part of our team. And I'm very happy to congratulate Sammy as the 2021 Employee of the Year.
That was very, very nice. Thank you all.
Of course, well-deserved, Sammy. Counselors are probably aware of a little bit of it, but dealing with even like our annexation process that we're going through, there's just tons of discussion and clarity and working with me to have a script so I say the right things during these meetings, but also just that we're working the process right so that our ordinances and resolutions are following our master plans, comprehensive plans, Oregon revised statutes. It's coming from every direction. And Sammy's the basket that it all flies at. She collects it all and organizes it and makes us all look good. So well-deserved. Thank you, Sammy. You do a great job and well-deserved. Any comments from any counselors? Good.
I'd say great job. You have been invaluable to me, that's for sure. But I know to the city also, I know you're very involved in everything. And I think that you do really represent the city correctly. Thank you, Sammy.
Councilor Fox?
I'm sure this goes for other citizens, but there have been many times I've had to call Sammy over some bill that I've had that either I haven't opened the envelope for 5 months and didn't realize it had gone up, or I've overpaid it and how come I have so little on the bill? And she's always researched everything and come through and keeps an even temper with some irate New Yorker.
Thank you, John.
Well, again, well-deserved, and I know the work will continue, and especially over the challenge of digitalizing our meetings and having to learn how to run all of this stuff. And obviously, you don't learn it all; you just keep learning. And
I have wonderful support and I work with a great team of people and leaders. I really do enjoy everyone. Thank
Good.
you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. And moving on. We have a term of service, years of service award. Ann?
Yeah, so we have a 5-year service award being presented to David Gregory. David works as our police and evidence technician. So in the last 5 years, he has completed the International Association of Property and Evidence Technician course, and that's a significant step towards evidence room accreditation. He's modernized the Coburg Police Department's evidence room. We are now computer databasing and barcoding our evidence. This is a significant step towards accreditation. He's created an officer evidence handbooks for evidence processing and packaging, and this is another step towards accreditation. He has attended the Oregon Peace Officers Career Development course, and he got the highest GPA in the class. And he's obtained intermediate, advanced, and supervisory law enforcement officer certifications. It's the highest level of certifications possible without being the executive management or the chief of police. So we're very happy to have David here, and congratulations.
Thank you, Ann, and congratulations to David. 5 years went by fast. It seems like I was just here when we just hired him and moving on, but he has done so much for our department. And I know the evidence is his main task, but he's done a lot of other things for the city hall and the community. And I really appreciate David. So thanks again. Okay. Agenda review.
So we do have a couple changes, just minor, to the agenda tonight. I sent all council an additional item, so you guys know it as a red folder item when you're here in house. This was a email from Kathy Ingebretson today. We have added that with agenda item 2 on our agenda. Did everybody receive that? Okay, it will also be for people joining in on the live stream. It will also be available on our website. And then also on the agenda with special guests. We are going to have the Finance Audit Committee report will be after our audit presentation tonight. So we're just going to switch those 2 around so we can get Steve out of here. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Sammy. Now, clarification on, you said it's after item 2 for Kathy Ingebretson for the handout?
Yes, that's correct. So that really kind of goes with the audit discussion. So that was the best fit. So we'll have the audit presentation, and then I figured it would go right after that, and then the presentation from our Finance Oversight Committee.
Got it. I know you explained it to me earlier, but I was just reading this and kind of got tripped up on it. So thank you for clarifying again. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll call for citizen testimony. Any citizens that testify, I ask that you state your name and your address for the record. Do we have any citizens to testify? I'm taking that as a no. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I did actually sign up for this part too.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So Kathy Ingebretson, I'm at 32703 East Locust Street here in Coburg. I just wanted to make a couple comments here as a citizen. First, it's about our land use planning budget. So years ago, when I was serving on the Planning Commission, we were keenly aware that there were several areas of our Coburg's development code that needed major updates and upgrades. And unfortunately, at that time, the city didn't have the budget to do any substantive code updates because we were working on the wastewater system. So the goal was always to pivot to major development code updates just as soon as we could after getting the wastewater system in place. Now, after serving on the ad hoc development code committee in this past year, I am actually concerned to see that there are quite a few areas of our development code that I feel are still really pretty severely lacking in quality and quantity. And so I just want to make sure that the city council is aware of that. And I would like to request that we do budget for getting an expert land use consultant in to work on some more projects. So there is a project going on right now to update the central business district code, but I was seeing deficiencies in our subdivision code, multifamily. And I think given that there might be some more light and industrial coming soon, I think that should be reviewed again to make sure there aren't a lot of holes there. And all of the point of all of this is just to help this make sure that we're ready for more development and that citizens can feel comfortable that we have basic protections in place to make sure that we can maintain the charm and livability of Coburg into the future. So I just want to make sure that that's on the city council's radar. And then I have one other quick topic if I still have time. I have heard some talk about potential for a type of company that I'm talking about sort of our light industrial areas or potential new light industrial areas, potential for a bottling type company to come in that would draw our city water and then package that water in some kind of beverage and then distribute it who knows where. I'm very concerned about that because I want to make sure that we have enough water for our citizens. I think, the state is experienced severe drought for years on end, and I don't think that's going to end. So I just want to also put that out there. There are probably some rules that we can put into place to either prohibit that type of activity in our town or to restrict it. So to make sure that we're protecting our water source. So that was the other item I wanted to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate your input. Comments from councilors? Councilor Lehman.
Kathy, can you give us an example of a code upgrade that you feel we need, and either the most pressing or just any, to give us kind of a ballpark idea of what you're talking about there?
Yeah, like one example, with the subdivision code, there are a number of recommendations that I've written up a couple of different times to provide to committees that indicate, a dozen things that are really lacking there, and that it just opens the door for just sort of development to happen in a haphazard way that is not just kind of leaving it up to the developer, what anything goes type of thing. And we can have better protections in place for our community than what we have right now. One example is even just fixing an error that was a copy and paste error where there's just one word that needs to be changed. I've brought that up many years and it still isn't getting done. So there's that's one example. Things like making sure that we're not allowing alleyways to be used as a primary access to a new subdivision. It's that kind of stuff. Multifamily, we really don't have any kind of design standards on that. I think that multifamily is going to be a big pressing issue going forward in the state of Oregon, because there is some push to make sure that cities are really actually providing more affordable housing or multifamily housing. And what tends to happen if you just leave that to developers is that it doesn't get built. And so there's some rules that the state has been talking about pushing down to cities. So I think that's just going to be a hot topic, and it would be nice to have some better design standards for multifamily type buildings, so that we don't end up with just sort of a big monolithic apartment building right smack dab in a single family neighborhood. So that would be a couple examples. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Councilor McConnell, and then Councilor Fox.
Having worked on this ad hoc committee with Kathy and with Councillor Fox, Kathy, she's just an amazing person for us to have in our community, really. And I totally agree with her concerns, and I can't speak strongly enough about the need for us to do some serious working on the things that she mentioned. In the committee that we served on, we thought that, well, I guess we thought we were doing some of that, and as it came back to us, we're like, no, your area of concern was more limited than that. So I share Kathy's concerns. I hope we can make it a priority, and I can't speak seriously enough about just the few things that she brought up tonight that are not in our code books in a strong language that we need.
Thank you, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Fox.
Yes, I appreciate Kathy's comments and echo Councilor McConnell's. I think in general, it's good to review things from time to time to look for any discrepancies that may be there, or additions that you may want. And also new innovative concepts come down the pike, and it's good to be ahead of the curve rather than behind the curve, so that you can be proactive rather than reactive on things. So I think the concept is a really good one.
Thank you, councilors. I do want to mention that Kathy Ingebretson wrote a wonderful email with a summary of her and presentation of her concerns regarding our code. I have that in a file, and it's flagged and starred and everything else, because it is a significant list and very thorough. And I agree with everything she's got on there. I've added a couple of things to that list. I think a simple example would be one of my pet projects has been to control the use of metal-sided utility buildings in residential areas. You can go around town and look and see the eyesores that I consider, and they just don't belong in residential areas. It used to be in our code. It disappeared, I believe, about 2004 during one of the last updates. So there's that kind of stuff that is throughout the code that we need to look at. We were really happy with what the ad hoc committee did for our business commercial district. And we're looking forward to hopefully implementing that same group of people to move forward with the others. So it's certainly in our planning to do that. I think that committee was as good as you could get. The skills, the background and experience of those people in that committee is just amazing. And I hope we can utilize them again. I saw Councillor Lehman, and then I also see Ann. So Councillor Lehman and then Ann.
So to the issue of water consumption, I agree it would be nice to have some kind of language that if in the future we ever did come to a water shortage, maybe either by drought or by expansion of a light industrial need for water, that there could be some provision that residential water was a priority for the city. And if there was any kind of restrictions or cutbacks in water consumption, it would go to industrial business use rather than residential.
Duly noted, and I'm sure Megan's going to have that on her list. Ann.
Yeah, I just want to clear up because I think that there's a misconception that the changes that have come up can't be made with the development code that's coming up. I think that Urban Collaborative is definitely dealing with the downtown corridor, and you guys have done some great work with that. But that doesn't mean that prior to bringing the development code for adoption, that there couldn't be some changes made in there. And if the committee wants to review those changes outside of the work of the Urban Collaborative, and you're willing to do that, then absolutely we could go ahead and do that. And if we need to have a professional help with the language, we can certainly do that as well. It's just not going to happen under the Urban Collaborative contract, because we specifically asked them to do the form-based code for the downtown. So subdivision changes could be made. Megan can research multifamily language, and when we do adopt the new code, there's no reason why we couldn't add more into those changes. So I just want to make sure that is clear. It's really, we just can't ask them to take on more zones than what we contracted them to do.
I'd also like to add that Kathy Ingebrigtsen brings up the multifamily housing, and we do need to address that in Coburg. It left up to the developers, we would just have upper middle income, single family residents all over Coburg because that's where the money is. I think we need to look at those things and beyond a low income or starter family home, what I refer to as legacy housing, people that have lived here all their lives and then they want to downsize. There is no downsizing in Coburg. It's downsizing to somewhere else other than Coburg. You can't get a small, less expensive home in Coburg. It's just almost impossible. So I think that's could answer a couple of different shortcomings that Coburg has. The other issue is that the state is mandating this stuff, and currently there's some mandates that we aren't affected by because it's a population limit, or a threshold. If it's below 10,000 or 5,000, you don't have to do these things. But I think if we don't do something pretty soon, I think the state will drop those thresholds down, and we may build up into those thresholds where we will have to do it. So I believe in planning and think that we should be looking at those things and protect ourselves. So those are all things that the staff is very aware of, and of course our ad hoc committee and planning commission that I look forward, and we planned on addressing those hopefully this year or the next fiscal year to move forward with these and really get them updated before we get caught. not, and by caught, I mean, somebody builds something that we regret because we didn't have it in the code. So thank you. Thank you for those comments. Okay. Any other, move on here.
Right.
Consent agenda. We have the minutes for the January 11th, 2022 City Council. Are there any?
Mayor, can I just note, I have new minute recorders tonight that Counselor Blaine has joined the meeting for the record at 7:25. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Counselor Blaine. Okay, consent agenda for the minutes of the January 11th, 2022 City Council. Are there any amendments to it, changes, concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Thank you. So there's a motion by Counselor Bell and a second by Counselor Blaine to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand in front of the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, counselors. Audit presentation. Steve, I know you're still here. There you are.
I'm still here, yes.
Presentation for the city.
All right. Well, let's see. So I guess the place to start with is same as I did with the URA. The audit went well. We got a little bit of a late start on it. There were an awful lot of challenges relating to the bond refunding that we'll talk about a little bit more, but all in all, everything went very well. Again, the challenges of doing as much as we can remotely adds a little bit to the difficulty. Some of the issues that we face assessing internal controls, what I will say with the city of Coburg is that what you have with Tim and Ann being able to review a lot of what Tim does because of her experience with the finances is a far better set of internal controls than an awful lot of cities the size of Coburg. And then I think those two work real well together to review a lot of things. And to your benefit, that has taken place regularly. Let's see, some of the things that are important to understand with an audit is the details that go into the audit, the number of adjustments that have to be made to go from budgetary schedules to the full accrual schedules are not something that is anything that we expect very many, if any, of our clients to do because of the complexity of those. And really understanding what those are is something that if you're interested, I could go over some of that. But a lot of the issues that you see in the very first two statements of the financial statements, the statement of net position and the statement of activities, don't have really a whole lot to do with your budgetary accounting, but really incorporate into it non-budgetary items like the capital assets and the depreciation related to those assets, to the long-term debt and the payment of those debt principals each year, and also the PERS and OPEB liabilities, OPEB being other post-employment benefits liabilities and these things called deferred inflows and outflows that are part of the statements of net position. It's difficult at best to read these financial statements and get a full understanding of them. And to the extent that you guys want to, I can go over some of that stuff. To the extent that you'd just rather not and get a brief report on the fact that the audit went well and that these financial statements are without material misstatement, I can summarize very briefly that way. I also just wanted to comment, I look back at 5 years ago when we were engaged to begin auditing the city there, and what we were up against, what Ann had worked so hard to get quite a mess previously cleaned up. I don't know how many of you were around for that, but what you guys have now compared to what was going on 5 years ago is night and day. And it is so fine compared to the way it was. It's such a turnaround that, because we audit some other cities that are struggling with similar stuff. I don't know that I ever saw anything quite as mixed up mess as Coburg was, but some bad accounting, some bad management in terms of just fund management and all those things. But those beginning years, the general fund had a negative fund balance. There was just a scrambled mess. And with a lot of help from Kathy that you guys engaged to help oversee some of the monitoring of things there, also really got things cleaned up and just fantastic books now, as far as I'm concerned. So you really can rely on what you're getting with these annual reports, and as far as I'm concerned, on a monthly basis, it's you should be very proud of what you have now. So with that, to the extent that you want to hear more, I'd be happy to. I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, the city's in a great financial position. You have adequate cash, you have good cash flows. The work that was done last year to refinance all of the debt into, there were, I think, 9 different loans, and they're now really just 2 loans. What you see on the financial statements is kind of, and I could address that a little bit if you're interested in hearing the challenges that we run into and trying to make accounting work for the very complex issues that we deal with in terms of governmental accounting standards and the reporting standards that go with it. But what you'll see on page 36 of the audit report is this one loan with US Bank that ultimately is reported in 3 different places because it's a combined loan related to water, sewer, and the governmental funds, the general fund, which anyway, they're all separately reported, but they're all one loan. So just wanted to be clear about that because it's a little confusing to look at there. The US Bank Global Corp Trust Services, you'll see towards the top of the page there on 36, that the governmental portion of that, and then the 2 down under the business type loans, the same name, just separated out by sewer portion and water portion. That's done just for reporting purposes, but it is just one set of bonds, basically. So, but that kind of indicates some of the complexities there, and consolidating all of those an issue dealing with the bond premiums that you received in the sale of those bonds and how those are accounted for. Relatively complex stuff. And, I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, what's reported here is accurate and reliable for both for you guys to look at and also for creditors to look at in the future and have correct information there. So with that, I will be quiet long enough to see if there are any questions anybody has.
Councilor Lehman.
Just a language suggestion on page 25.
Page 25.
Under street fund.
All righty.
So revenues for this fund come from state highway taxes, grants, and system development charges. I would just suggest we add our city's gas tax to that sentence.
Okay, we'll do that.
Other councilors? Councilor Lehman.
And on page 64.
Okay.
So this was a topic brought up in the Finance Audit Committee. We were just a little confused by the fluctuation and variance of the employer's proportion of the net pension liability and the employer's proportionate share of the net pension liability from 2015 to 2021. Just a little bit of comment about explaining that.
Okay, that is one of those lovely complex issues that essentially we take information from PERS. PERS issues their audited annual report and separates based on the percentage of the employer's proportion of those liabilities that you see in column identified as column A there. They take their total liability and separate it out by those employer portions and provide each government in the state with a summary of the data that has to be reported in these financial statements. And so what we take is that information and just continue. This is building to be a 10-year history eventually, which is, you'll see the asterisk explaining all of that. But so only in 2015 did this reporting begin to be a required report. And what that means in terms of the city's liability, I can only tell you that these are based on significant estimates that PERS does. They hire an actuarial company, Milliman and Company, that has done the actuarial calculations for many, many years for PERS and provides those to the city. The bottom line there, the fact that it is a negative number is kind of a misnomer. If you look at the description up at the heading of column B there, when it's in parentheses, it means that there was actually amount of the liability wasn't a liability at all, it was an asset. And this is according to PERS, how they do their accounting and what they determine to be an overall asset or liability is way more complex than what we're required to understand for doing the audit. We are supposed to read the numbers and look at them and see if they make sense. And you know, they make sense in that they don't look like they're wildly fluctuating any one year. What you see there is a growing liability. If you look at the employer's proportionate share, you'll also see a growing percentage of the overall state numbers. But what drives those liabilities and or asset, the calculations are there are innumerable, I will say, many variables that go into that. That if you really want to know, there's a whole like 20-page plus disclosure that describes a lot of that that goes into that calculation. But it is, there's two things about it, I guess I can tell you, is number one, it is complex, and number two, there's really not a lot that you as the council members or the staff in an administrative role, or me as the auditor, can do about that liability. It's just what PERS is calculating as the city's proportionate share of the state's overall liability. And you know, the frustration that because your question is not unusual, why is that going up so much? Well, that is an issue that is something that the state legislature has tried to tackle by creating tier 2 and then tier 3 PERS. Ultimately, at some point in the future, as the tier 1 folks retire and begin to pass away, that liability potentially could start going down. But ultimately, those liabilities are what determine what your PERS rates are. There are all kinds of restrictions on how much PERS can increase those by. They're called collars. But anyway, I could go on and on about that, but the question is a good one and a complex answer that I don't know that I'll ever be able to answer as fully as would be appropriate if we had the time. And I'll be honest, if I could explain how those numbers were calculated more specifically, I'd be happy to, but did that help at all? Okay.
Any other questions for Steve? I just want to state that I believe that, you know, this process and the audit and our financial oversight is one of the council's main jobs. That's what we're here for, is to make sure this money is spent appropriately, budgeted right, and we follow all the appropriate rules and laws and statutes. And so even though it may be tough to get a hold of, it is our job to look at this and be accountable for that money to the public. And I will say that I was here 5 years ago when Steve came on, and we were in a horrible mess and laying people off and no money to do anything. As Kathy Ingebretson alluded to, we didn't have money to even put a committee together and hire a staff person to help them with a code development or anything else. So we are in a better place. And I think our reporting records and our monthly reports and stuff, thanks to council input, is very clear and works really well. I spend a lot of time as mayor signing checks and thus looking at financial statements and bank statements and try to stay up on top of it. It's a lot of information, but again, this is one of our main responsibilities as a council. I want to, at this time, thank the Audit and Finance Committee, because Kathy is here, and carry that forward, because that gives me just not a little bit, but so much more feeling of security that we have people on that committee that are looking at this and helping us to make sure that we're doing everything right. So thanks and kudos to everybody, the staff and that committee. And thank you, Steve, for your report. Any
Absolutely,
other questions?
yeah.
Any other questions or statements for Steve? How about you, Steve? You want to close up?
Well, I just want to concur with you, and and really thank each of you guys. The fact that you have an audit committee, so to speak, speaks volumes about your integrity and the council's integrity and concern about finances, because most cities do not have a committee such as that. Maybe it's just based on that history that exists, but you guys on the council are a critical part of the internal controls of the city in your monitoring of those reports and understanding what's going on. And lastly, I guess I just want to say, you know, what with that, all that refinancing, all those bonds and notes payable into those single debts, the amount, and you probably knew this, but I just want to reiterate the difficulty of that, but ultimately over time will save the city somewhere around $1 million in interest costs. And so job well done in recognizing that possibility and making sure that it happens. So congratulations to you on that. And I'll just leave it with that, other than, you know, I try and thank all of the council members for all of your volunteerism. You don't get thanked often enough for what you do. And it's truly remarkable how well you guys do in Coburg. So, and your staff does great too. It's just a very, very, it gives me hope in a world that there's not lots sometimes, but so I'll leave it with that.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Then I'll entertain Councilor Bell, go ahead.
Well, the only question that I have is on the very last page on 84.
Mm-hmm.
We detected that the city had not registered with the Oregon State Treasurer as of December 15th as required. I assume that we have remedied that at this point, and how do we make sure that that doesn't happen in the future?
So I don't know whether that's been remedied yet. It's a rather simple process, and one that's kind of just out there in amongst the hundreds of regulatory issues. What's happening there is that the state of Oregon, probably 10 years ago, put together a pool of banks, basically, that have agreed to participate in this pool, where when a government has deposits in excess of the FDIC amount, which is $250,000, then this pool provides the assurance, the insurance, as it were, for covering those deposits. And banks have an opportunity to either participate or not. And your guys' bank's Key Bank, I believe, if I'm remembering right, does participate. The regulations have altered a little bit, where it used to be that you were only supposed to just check and make sure that your bank was participating. And if they weren't, then you either needed to be sure that your deposits were less than $250, or you could get what's called a certificate of participation from banks. Well, those rules changed to where now you're just supposed to register with the state treasurer's office that you are indeed banking with one of the participating banks. So, and that rule came out 1.5 years or so ago. So it's just something that we've had a lot of our audit clients that that wasn't happening. And I don't know what the treasurer's office did to notify everybody of that rule change, but it's something that would just matter of, I think, going to the website. I looked at it with Tim when we discussed this issue, and I believe he's done whatever it is. Tim, you can speak to that.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, sure. Yeah. A lot of what this is when you get a new employee in the position, the contact information is that's really challenging to get all the contacts updated. So the emails are still going to Tanya. And I, after Steve and I talked about that, I reached out, and we're in the process of getting that fixed. It will be fixed really shortly.
It's the little things.
Just the little things, yeah.
It's amazing how hard it is to get contacts updated. It's challenging for sure. We're almost there, though, I think.
Thank you for that input. So I do have a question, Steve. Councilor Lehman recommended a couple of amendments to the audit report.
Yes.
certainly like to put those in. Is there an issue with that where we would just?
No,
ask-
not at all. I can send a revised version to Secretary of State and I can get you guys copies of that virtually overnight here. So
Okay.
we can get those updated.
Councilor Lehman, I'm sorry to ask you, but could you restate those suggested amendments so that we can make sure they're on record?
I think there was just one. It was on page
Okay.
64, I believe.
Yeah, you had the page 25 about adding gas tax. I remember that. So
Yeah. I don't have the page handy here, but it was a statement about the revenue for the street fund came from state highway taxes,
the funding sources for the
right,
street fund. Yeah.
system development fees, but
Yeah.
it didn't include the city gas taxes, which I think is a significant contributor to that fund. So just adding that language.
Just that one couple of words there. Yeah.
Yeah, city gas taxes.
All right. Sammy, do you have that? Is that enough for you?
Yes, that is, we've got it. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, if I'm going to call for any last comments or statements. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit as amended.
I move to accept the audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 as amended.
Councillor Fox with a motion, Councillor Blaine with a second. So there's a motion by Councillor Fox and a second by Councillor Blaine to accept the annual financial report through June 30th, 2021 as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hand in front of the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve, for your presentation and your good work. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Okay, Finance Audit Committee report. Kathy Ingebrigtsen.
Hello. Yeah, so I
Welcome
just
back.
wanted to, thank you, just briefly kind of follow up on an issue or an item that I think I talked about it briefly at the December council meeting, and our audit and finance committee did meet at the end of January and discussed it. So I just wanted to circle back and kind of close the loop on this. And this was in regard to a letter from the Secretary of State's office from one of the manager there. Amy Dale is her name. And the city received this letter from the state after submitting its audit for the year ended 2020, I believe. Yeah, for the year ended June 30th, 2020. And it was a letter that talks about three items that should be considered to ensure future financial reports are in alignment with reporting standards. And basically, a couple of the city councilors evidently still had some lingering concerns or questions about this letter. And I just want to, now that I've had a chance to review it and talk with the audit committee about it, just report back on kind of what it means and essentially, and just clarify that for the record for everybody. So the short answer here is these three items are comprised of two suggestions, and then the third item is moot. So, but let me talk to that a little bit more. So the first two items that the state called out as potential issues, and I'm talking from a background, as many of you know, I work in finance and accounting. That's my profession. So that's where I'm formulating these opinions from. And I wouldn't expect people that aren't finance professionals to necessarily know what they're looking at when they look at a letter like this. So anyway, the first two items the state calls out are basically suggestions, and they're suggestions around particular terms that were used, technical terms that were used in the narrative part of the financial statements for that year. And so really that is all it is. For those two items, I would have just expected our auditor to look at those and then make a determination on whether the auditor wants to accept these suggestions from the state or whether the auditor thinks, no, I think the terminology that we've used in these specific terms is more accurate, and therefore the auditor would keep using the terms they had already. So anyway, those are somewhat minor in my opinion. It really comes down to the auditor's professional opinion on which terminology to use in those situations. And then the third item, it talks about the budget and actual schedule that was provided, and a concern that we may have been in violation of a local budgeting law. But that issue is now moot because all that happened was an outdated version of the city's budget was included in the supplemental reporting to our financial statements. And of course, as soon as the city and the auditor received this letter, they went ahead and provided the updated budget to the state to prove that we are in fact in compliance. We always were in compliance with that rule. We just needed to provide the final documentation to the state so that they could confirm that and be aware of that. So the other thing that I thought about was, is there anything we need to do in the city, like with our internal controls or something, to prevent something like that happening again? And the something like that would be just that item 3, the budget. Essentially we sent an outdated budget version to the state, and we had to resend it. So that's what happened. As far as internal controls go, though, my judgment is no, we don't actually need any internal control, because if you read my memo or my email, budgets are not audited. It doesn't matter if you're a private entity or a government entity or a nonprofit. Audits are done on your actuals, on your actual revenues, the reporting of your actual expenses, and so forth. And so technically, no, you don't have internal controls around budgets, because your budgets just are not actually a formal part of your financial statements. It's really those your actual results, your actual revenues and expenditures. Those are audited with the idea that the auditor is trying to make sure that the financial reporting that you all as city councilors and the public are receiving, it's accurate. It doesn't have a risk of being materially misstated. So that's the point of the audit. And so sending in an outdated budget to the state and then having to resend it, it doesn't pose any risk at all to our financial statements. It's just a miscommunication. So that was my conclusion. And I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any other comments on that. But as far as I'm concerned, like I say, we're dealing with a couple of suggestions and then what item that ends up being moot. And so I don't feel that this particular letter is of a grave concern for the city.
Questions for Kathy? Statement? I will once again say, I'm really glad we have this audit committee to look at those details and take care of the detail aspect of it. It just makes me feel so much more comfortable in our financial situations to have people that know what they're looking at and know what processes we need to have in place to make sure we're doing the right things. So thank you very much for the report, Kathy. All right, we're going to move to ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2022-05, a resolution authorizing the adoption of a health reimbursement arrangement plan. Tim.
Okay. So currently, the city provides a $50 per month health reimbursement agreement, which we'll call HRA going forward here, for the employees. This benefit is a pre-tax, so it saves the city and the employees some tax dollars. The current provider has not given us the level of customer service that we find acceptable for the city or the employees. I've had many employees come to me and we're provided a debit card. The card doesn't work when they're at a doctor's office, which is can be embarrassing in one sense, and it's also just, it should work. Getting them to make it work is very difficult. Also in the past, it's been very hard for myself as an administrator to get a hold of our rep. We don't get a real good response back from them as far as timeliness. So what we're asking with this resolution is to switch to what they call a HRA Viva. We asked one of our insurance consultants if there were any other companies we might want to consider for a different HRA, a different administrator for our HRA account. Her name is Kim Nicholson. She's one of our agents of record for WHA Insurance. She recommended this to us. We will be required to fund this, and it does have a cost, which is mentioned in the resolution. If you guys do decide to approve this resolution, the city will save over $1,500 a month. Within 8 months, we will have saved the amount that this funding is going to cost. And then going forward, we'll continue to save at least that $1,500 a month. I had a question about why we didn't just make a resolution that stated something to the effect that we switch from Pacific Source to Gallagher as the company that administers this. The reason we don't do that is this is sort of like the resolution is sort of like a contract between the city and Gallagher, and it allows them to do the pre-tax stuff because there's a lot of regulations and rules around that. And if the resolution is passed, we can administratively make the switch without any issues. It's very standard language. And if we were looking at any other company for this similar type of benefit for our employees, we would have to do a very similar resolution. So having said that, do you have any questions from anybody?
Councilor Bell?
Yes, you said it was going to save us $1,500 a month. In the printout that we have, it says $1,500 a year.
Oh, you know what? You're right. That's a mistake on my part. I apologize. That's misinformation I just gave you. So
Which
we will not.
Is it?
It's $1,500 a year. I apologize.
Okay.
I just misspoke it.
And then
so it won't be recovered in 8 months. I apologize. I made a mistake. Sorry.
Okay.
No, nothing egregious or anything.
And then
I apologize.
And then there will be a one-time cost to fund these balances. How much is that one-time cost?
Well, when I looked it up, the cost was $11,945. And what that's doing is it's just taking the money that the employees have accumulated with the current company and moving it to this company, if that makes sense.
So the city doesn't do that? That comes out of what is already in the employees?
The current HRA does not require to be funded. They reimburse as the employees use the cards, but it's a liability to the city right now that is the same amount. So it doesn't have, there's a cost obviously, but it doesn't have a bottom line effect on our numbers at all. Because once you fund it, the liability goes away.
Okay. And then, so in the resolution, and I understand your explanation, we don't need to have who is the third party administrator for the HRA. That is never put in the resolution. Is that correct?
Let me look at the resolution real quick. No, and this resolution is provided, most of the language in here is provided by Gallagher. So I took it and worked with them to create it, but they provide most of the language. So no, we don't have to identify. You're just allowing us to move into this with them, basically. I know it doesn't state it, but that's what the resolution will accomplish.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilor McConnell.
Have we done some due diligence on understanding exactly, well, not understanding, but into the background of Gallagher Company? I know Pacific Source has been a well-recognized company in the community, so I'm like surprised at their level of communication and customer service, but I have not heard of Gallagher. Have you checked references on them other than the one that you got?
With regards, I'll just say a brief thing about Pacific Source. Obviously, I haven't been here very long, but I've heard from others that it's been a problem for some time. With Gallagher, they manage this type of program. They're the only one in the state that does that. And I believe Kim Nicholson's who I'm counting on to give us good information. And she said approximately 60% of cities who participate in HRA type plans use Gallagher for this plan, if that helps.
Other questions for Kim? Councilor Lehman.
So I believe this is the first reading we've had of this resolution. So the question I have is procedural or process clarification. I've been under the impression that most of the time when we approve a resolution, we either have a first or second reading on it, unless it's an emergency.
That relates to an ordinance. A resolution does not require that. This is a typical resolution that we would read, get the staff report, and then make a vote on in one meeting.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. The only other thing I would say is just from a counselor's perspective is if we're moving away from one provider for any kind of service where we feel that it's been subpar, I'd like to have something in writing from that provider responding to our concerns so we have a balanced view of what's occurring.
I'm confused. You're going to have to clarify that, Councilor Lehman.
Well, have we heard back from city by Pacific Source that we've had concerns? Have we heard them respond to those concerns at all? Do we know what their side of the story is?
Well, I don't know that I would want to hinder staff by having to get a statement from a company or representative that is not providing service to us. To ask them to get some kind of a response from them seems like we're already having bad service there. We got to respond to that.
Well, I'm just saying we don't have any balanced view on what the issue is other than what our staff is saying that they've had difficulty with it. And I just wondered if we've reached out to say, we've had this problem with you. We're going to terminate this contract we've had with you for, I don't know, how long have we had this service with them? Does it go back a number of years and all of a sudden it's no longer satisfactory? And
well, personally, I would have to state that I would want to trust the staff to make that because they're the ones that deal with these on an ongoing basis. And my observation with staff is they're pretty patient, and especially during COVID, you know, when things start to be a problem, it still takes quite a while before staff is considering looking at things. And I look at things like our alarm system contract and other things that went on for months before they decided to change it. So I am going to put my trust in the staff that they aren't just going to arbitrarily move something because they don't.
I don't want to be mischaracterized in what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that I distrust the staff on this. I was just asking if we've had any reach out to Pacific Source to let them know that we've had these concerns and had an opportunity to hear back from them. And the other question I have is, it's a cost of $11,945 over 8 years to recoup it back, not 8 months.
Yeah, I apologize for that misstatement. That was, I overthought that and did that computation on the fly a few minutes ago. I should have looked at it a little closer. I apologize for that confusion.
I want to just jump in. So just to make sure that you understand that the HRA as it is now, the staff is awarded $50 a month, but it is set up as a liability in the books. And the city only kicks the money over when the staff spend it. And so it's a liability in the books on this side. And we only pay out the fees to manage it. Switching to this other company, it's actually forward funded. So the money is actually going into the bank on behalf of the staff and it sits there. So the city doesn't have this management of having to pay every month what everybody spent. So we're kind of being put in the place of a bank, being a bank and paying the medical bills that the staff have turned in every month. Tim has to cut over a check to pay the bills. So when we pre-fund this, when we switch over, then yes, it is a cash that we're going to have to put out, but the liability that's sitting on our books goes away. So it's a zero effect on our fund balance for the general fund in the end, because yes, we're spending the cash, but we're also getting rid of the liability. As finance director for several years, we have never had a smooth moment working with this company with our Bennett cards from the day we were given them. If you were to ask the staff, and if this is a surprise to the company, then they're not listening to us, because I can't tell you how many phone calls we've made because our cards aren't working, or we didn't receive them when we should have, or so I think that the frustration of the staffs, Tim is really responding to the frustration of the staff that by now this should have been worked out, but it's a continuous issue. And so that's what I'd like to share about that.
Did that answer your concern, Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, I don't like voting on something I don't really fully understand, or I'm hearing it for the first time. So I'll just abstain tonight.
Any other comments or questions? And I want to speak to the resolution versus ordinance. Many of what we call the smaller business items are an ordinance when it's a contract issue or something, small term contract. I misspoke, are a resolution. And it's going to be a one-time presentation in your packet to read the background, and we make a vote on it. Ordinance is required to have the 2 public hearings and 2 readings and a public hearing, and then we vote on it. So resolutions are a very typical thing that we only bring on once. And Sammy, did you have some further to say with that?
I did, and it just helps kind of make it clear for me. So anything by ordinance is a law, and then resolutions are more policy decisions. So ordinances have to be followed, and if they're broken, there's a punishment for them. And then the policies are for your personnel things, for contracts, anything that's not a legal law.
All right, thank you. We'll call for last chance for questions or comments on this. Councillor Alexander.
I have multiple screens going, so I was trying to find my pointer. The only question I have, and I can understand what Councillor Lehman is saying, because it's true. This just came forward. And I know you've had a long time and hard time with these people since beginning, as Anna's saying. But I'm curious what benefits does this HRA VIBA account offer that the current provider does not? And I'm only saying that because I see one, but I'm just looking for multiple benefits that it offers.
Well, a couple of the big things is it's what they call portable. So if we have a long-term employee, one of our goals is to keep long-term employees. They actually take that, whatever they've accumulated over those years goes with them. So let's say I work here for another 20 years. When I get done, I'm going to retire, and you can use some of that for any kind of health costs that you might have. It's also, there's 4 levels of, it's similar to an investment. So as an employee, once it goes into our account and it's ours, we have 4 levels of, if you want to be riskier, you can actually grow the fund yourself. So there's that. I believe it also transfers to a spouse if you should happen to pass away. There's quite a number of benefits that I could provide to you. I just don't have those right at my fingertips right now. I think the biggest one is the portability. If you have a long-term employee, they get to take it with them. And it's not, it's been accumulated, so it's not a big cost at the end of that. It's just like a piggy bank, sort of, I would say.
So when there's a situation of that person leaving and the money going with them, what fills that gap?
What fills that gap?
What you took with you, what actually refills that account?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
If you're going to be taking, let's see, if you were to leave for any reason, the balance of funds that the employee has earned, okay, I see, over this period, is there anything I guess what I'm concerned about, is there anything that the city needs to worry about as far as that benefit of being portable?
No, because once it's and the payments are made yearly or monthly or however we do it, which is the $50 I'm speaking of, it's totally detached from the city. It is now in the employee's account.
It severs from the city.
Correct. Sorry,
Okay.
I understand what you're asking. I'm sorry about that.
So,
Councilor Bell.
I just want to make a statement. As I read the packet last week when we were provided with these, and I do read these packets, and I know you all do, I did not understand what this was. I mean, I'm very familiar with HRAs and FSAs and all of that kind of stuff. But I reached out to Tim at that point and said, I don't understand this. You've got to help me here. And he did. He spent a great deal of time helping me through. And then I also, because I didn't understand what a VIBA is, that was totally foreign to me. There's a lot of information. City of Springfield uses a VIBA. Many, many cities within the state of Oregon use these VIBA accounts. So I had to ask, but I also had to look some things up and educate myself. And I guess I would just encourage us all to sort of do that. If we don't understand, to reach out before our meeting so that Tim is prepared and can answer. They're really very, very accessible. And I just appreciate that. So I just needed to say that.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors for comments, questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to adopt. Oh, sorry.
I move to approve
Resolution 2022-05, a resolution authorizing the adoption of a health reimbursement arrangement HRA plan.
And do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Councilor McConnell. Okay, there's a motion by Councilor Blaine and a second by Councilor McConnell to adopt Resolution 2022-05, a resolution authorizing the adoption of a health reimbursement arrangement plan. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand in front of the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes 5-4 with one abstention. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for your time, guys and gals.
Police quarterly report, Chief Larson.
Hi, everybody. So this is the quarterly report from the police department. This is for October, November, December. As you know, the police department does a wide variety of things. So I've broken it down or tried to capture all the activity into 7 different categories. The first one is traffic person stops. The second section is patrol business checks. Person crimes, which would be all sex crimes, fights, minute scene, runaway, suicidal subject, peace officer hold for a mental evaluation. The fourth section is property crimes, which would be a stolen vehicle, a theft, fraud, criminal trespassing, any of your property stuff. The fifth section is society crimes, which would be a DUI, reckless driving, drug possession, disorderly conduct, speeding vehicle, animal complaints. You can see there's a pretty good list there. The sixth section is warrant arrest or fugitive from justice. A fugitive from justice is somebody who has an outstanding warrant from another state, because we have a different process that we have to do for that to get them transported to another state. And the seventh section is all other crimes, which would be assisting Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, OSP, fire department, training, court, or any special assignments, anything like that. So the next section, you'll see a pie chart which divides up our activity. So you can see that 42% of our stuff was traffic and person stops, traffic enforcement. 30% was business checks, patrol checks, and then it breaks down to property crimes. Warrant arrests is like 1%. Society crimes was 10%. And in this quarter, compared to the previous quarter, patrol business checks were steady at 30% of our activity. Traffic and person stops increased from 37% to 42%. Society crimes and property crimes were reduced by 2%. And person crimes and calls for service reduced by 1%. Then the next page, I tried to list some of the activity that we respond to: lost property, stolen property, prisoner transport, DUI, dog at large, dispute, animal complaint. Just so you can see the whole list of variety of calls that we actually respond to. And that's not all of them, that's most of them. And then if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer on that particular section.
Councilor Alexander.
Sheriff, do you feel that there's a direct correlation because the traffic and person stops increased from 37 to 42%, but then society and property crimes were reduced and person crimes were reduced? Do you think that there's a direct correlation between our presence that actually has gone up in percentage for those stops and then down in crime as far as society and person crimes?
I think the more active we are on patrol and traffic stops with the lights going at night for traffic stops, I think that definitely has an effect. I'm not sure, how to measure that. This is only our second quarter on doing those stats. So I find it interesting that did happen, that there's a reduction. I just don't know the answer 100%.
Because I have noticed more patrolling, which I think is fantastic. And I think I've also noticed more specific patrolling down the streets. And I'm sure that's under your direction. I'm curious if that is under your direction or if that is something you changed that has actually caused this switch or change in percentages.
Well, with the addition of the new officer, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, that has definitely helped us to have the ability to patrol more. So you got 2 people on swing shift, probably the majority of the week. So I think that definitely has an impact.
Has Harrisburg seen a similar change?
I haven't looked at those stats like we have on ours.
Okay. Well, I appreciate what you're doing, and I know that it's not the time to do that right now, but I just want to say that up front. I had a complaint about trucks on Coleman, and 2 days later that stopped like clockwork. And I watched it for another week. It totally stopped. And I watched people that the same cars that I see run those stop signs, I saw them starting to stop because the trucks were stopping. So almost like the trucks were training the citizens that live around us. So whatever was done, and this is all connected, and I'm sure it is, I'm very thankful for that, to see these percentages go down and percentages go up on person stops, because it's obvious within 2 days of saying something to change. So you must have done something. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. And I did hear you at the last council meeting.
Councilor Fox.
I appreciate I'm a visual learner and I appreciate the graphics and the pie chart. I was going to say at the end of the year, year-end summary, but since you've been doing it for 2 quarters, it would be great to see the 3 quarters in either a bar graph or a line graph so we could see the trends at the end of the year and keep the data coming, because I think it's very helpful.
Councilor McConnell.
I do also like a pie chart and a any kind of chart, but can you just make one of the blues a green or a different color so I can tell the 2 blues apart? It's just, I can't tell the 10% from the 42%. Can you make it a different color?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Once again, it's the little things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Councilor McConnell. I had to really zoom in with my iPad to see what the difference was. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, the last section I have is the STOPS program, which is the stats that the state puts out. So STOPS is Statistical Transparency of Policing. So that was House Bill 2355. That was a couple of years ago. And this is the most recent report that they have. It's basically for racial profiling. And if you look at that, you can see that we definitely are not doing that because it breaks down the demographics by group. And you can see that there's not any type of discrimination in any way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to add that because I just recently came out, but that's the last STOP report for Coburg Police Department. And that's a state requirement for all agencies. We just had to do it in the last year and a half, maybe, because we're a tier 3 agency, which is all agencies between 1 and 24 police officers. So I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor McConnell.
Can you just repeat again what STOP stands for? I got statistical.
Statistical Transparency of Policing.
Any other comments or questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the visual and the reporting that definitely helps. It's
all right. You betcha.
Coburg Building Department Operating Plan, Megan Winter. Where did you go? Oh, there you go.
Good evening, counselors. I apologize for that delay. I have before you tonight the building operating plan. This is something that was prepared for us by Cottage Grove to meet a state requirement to have an operating plan in place.
Are there any questions for Megan on this? I will say personally that the transition that the state required us to take and remove third-party inspectors was a huge burden for the smaller communities. And unfortunately, I think the League of Oregon Cities trumpeted that loud and clear, and the legislation didn't listen. And we've finally gotten to a place where we can work and make it workable for us. And a big part of that is because we've contracted with Cottage Grove. They have a great service there, and I think staff can speak to how nice it's been that we changed from the previous contract with another city to Cottage Grove, and it's made it a lot better. Any questions or comments from council on the building report? Councilor Blaine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We built an ADU here in Coburg, and going through the process was very easy with Cottage Grove, and so far it's been very, very helpful. So yeah, I think it's going well from personal experience anyway.
And I've talked to a few builders that deal with multiple agencies in building, and they have just had nothing but glowing remarks for Coburg and how it's handled with the Cottage Grove staff. And Coburg, the contacts with City Hall here have been loud and clear, and I think deservedly so. All right. Any other questions or statements on this? Moving forward, the financial monthly report and quarterly presentation. Tim.
You gotta love technology. Okay, this is the quarterly financial report for the second quarter of our fiscal year, and that goes through December 31st of 2022. December is a 6 month of the year. If everything was spread out evenly during the year, we would be at 50% budget for revenues and expenditures. Next slide, please, Sammy. So far, we have received $2,903,882 in revenue, which is 29% of our budget. We've exceeded where we were last year at this time by approximately $245,000. Next slide, please, Sammy. And this is just a picture of our revenue this year compared to last year. I think it's easier to see with a picture sometimes than trying to look at a big chart full of numbers. So I just started including these to help everybody see that. Does anybody have any questions on our revenues? Okay.
Hang on a second here.
Sure.
Let me change my screen because I can't see everybody. So you might have to speak up without me recognizing you. Okay, I've got everybody now. Any questions from counselors?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Next slide, please, Sammy. The city has spent $2,506,554 through December 31st, which is 25% of our budget. We have spent approximately $287,000 less this year as the same time last year. Next slide, please, Sam. And this is the similar graph with expenditures, so you can see what we've done last year versus this year. And we currently have spent, we received 4% more revenue than what we have spent. Next slide. That's perfect right there, Sammy. Thank you. As of January 31st, we have received $806,058 in tax revenue. Last year at the same time, we collected $787,185. So that means we have approximately $18,800 more this year at the same time last year. Our cash balance currently is $5,517,066 as of December 31st. And that is $777,004 more than we were last time this year. Could you go back one, please, Sammy? Sorry, I got off a little bit. This slide shows where we are with this fiscal year starting in July. With our city gas tax, just the city gas tax compared to last year. Next slide, please, Sammy. And then this is just a little bit of a different type of graph so you can see how things are going, so to speak, just with this year in mind, fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please, Sammy. This is just a 4-month representation of our TUF fee, or I guess our TUF transportation utility fee. And I just wanted to throw this up there to show you that we've been progressing on this, and we're pleased with what the TUF has done for us. It's going to be another source to help us repair some of the streets that are in bad need of that. So it's only the 6th month of the year, so it's hard to project out to the end of the year. But what I will say is, at this time, all of our funds are operating within budget, and we're pleased with how revenues are coming in. We have begun the budget process here recently, and that work will escalate in the next few months. Does anybody have any questions?
Apparently not.
Okay. Thank you, guys and gals.
Thank you, Tim. Hey, once again, good to see pictures and graphs and bars to help us understand better. I like the trending, especially looking at the gas tax and stuff. I think that's always helpful to look at. So thanks again, Tim.
You bet. And if anybody has anything else they'd like to see, I mean, I'm always open for suggestion. I'll do what I can to provide specifically more graphs and stuff. I think those are very helpful. And if somebody has any suggestions, you can email me anytime.
All right.
Or stop by if you're not afraid to stop by.
Bring your maps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Let's see. We've got the administrative monthly report. Ann.
Well, good evening. Right now, the city is very project heavy. I actually got to have a meeting with Milo Meacham today, which if you've been around a while, you know who Milo is. It's so good to see his face. But I commented to him that everything that you worked with the city to plan for is taking place right now all at the same time. So it's just crazy amount of projects that we are undertaking right now, but it's working. A lot of our work at this time is engineering design. So a lot of our projects are in that phase. Water project is going as planned for the most part. We will be bringing the water team back together in March and to discuss one issue that we need to make some decisions about. So all projects are moving forward, and I listed them in my report. The City Hall actually our staff will come back to work fully on Monday of next week, the 14th, and the City Hall doors will be open. Staff is now all well. Everybody's well. Everybody's back to work if they're working at home or they're working in the office. So we're all looking forward to that. Believe it or not, our staff doesn't really like being out. They prefer to be in the office and all working together. So they're all ready to be back as a team. The City Hall is almost completely painted. There's a few things to still do, but for the most part it's done, and we're very happy with the design, the paint design. I have provided the council with some information last Friday on a piece, some information on annexation as far as a fiscal look at it. So I'm happy to talk with any counselors about that report. If you wanted to call or anything like that, please feel free. I'm willing to ask or answer any questions you might have regarding the administration report.
Counselor McConnell and then Bell.
I just have one question. The building looks great. When I stopped by to pick up my paperwork, I was just like, wow, this looks really nice with the black trim. But I have a question on the Coburg, Oregon blue and white sign. Are you going to switch over to the new logo, or are we going to stay with what we've got there?
So that was a discussion that the council had last year. There was never really a final discussion on it. We had talked about it initially, but then the people in Main Streets, the design committee in Main Streets really were not in favor of the city taking on that logo because they felt that it stepped away from the Main Streets logo. So the city could look at creating a new logo for the city that incorporates the bike. That's certainly an option. Or the council can say, no, we're going to elect to use the bike logo, but that decision was never made. And so we could, I mean, if the council had an interest in moving forward to change the logo, we can definitely put that project on our list. But at this point, the council hadn't expressed that they did want to move in that direction.
I was on that design committee, and I guess maybe I missed that meeting where someone said they didn't think that it should be incorporated in the city. I would personally love to see some coordination between it, but that's my own personal opinion.
Well, I'll second that, Councilor McConnell. I personally really like the new symbols, and I would like to see us head toward that someday. Councilor Bell, and then Councilor Fox.
I just have a quick question. Under the park project, the date on the grant is listed as April 1st, 2021. Is that supposed to be 22? Yeah, okay, that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilor Bell. Councilor Fox.
Yeah, I just want to echo both Councilor McConnell and Mayor Smith. That's to be really sophisticated. I find the old logo black, boring, and dated, and kiboshing it would be motivating to me. And whether or not we accepted the bike, which I like, but I think we need to go on a branding thing. And I said that last year, and I'd be all in favor of budgeting for good branding so that it goes ubiquitously throughout all the elements of Coburg, and we get a design standard and whatnot. But yeah, I'm all in favor of a new logo. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Fox. Recalling last year's discussion, this is a financial decision too, because we would have to switch over all of our letterhead and anything printed, and obviously our signage. So, you know, if you guys want to move forward with that, we can certainly put it on the project list and start taking a look at it. I believe that you know, the current logo that Main Street's brought forward is something that I'd like to see just universally. I think if you're going to start branding, all Coburg should have a symbol that represents Coburg, whether it's the government, whether it's the businesses. I'd like to see us move forward with something like that, but recognize it is a financial decision. And staff time too, so.
I can definitely list that as administrative goals and place it on the goal sheet for the next fiscal year to complete that process.
Just for confirmation, can we get a thumbs up or a thumbs down for moving forward with a new branding? Thumbs up, moving forward with new branding. Okay, we got 5, so, and myself, that's 6. So we'll move forward with looking at branding. changing the branding anyway. All right. Any other questions for the administrative summary? Councilor Alexander.
Did timing change on the collector streets summer of 2023? I can't remember.
We did push that out, and part of that was that we're trying to align with some water project stuff, and the other part was that the design work for that is just going to take a little bit longer than we anticipated. So, so yes, that did get pushed out a little bit.
To 23. Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I'm going to remind everybody that we have a work session scheduled for the 22nd of this month, joint work session with the Planning Commission and City Council. And then we will have a City Council special session after that on the same evening. And just so that everybody's aware, I wanted to be very clear that we kept those separated, because I wanted to have a work session where we could have staff present things and have good questions and stuff and not be hindered by a public hearing process. And then we'll go into the public hearing process afterwards. So they are two separate meetings. One's a learning session and one's a working session. Just to clarify that. So hopefully you'll be able to make it. I know one person had previous plans, unfortunately, but 22nd, I think we're starting at 6 o'clock for the work session. All right, any final comments, statements from counselors tonight before we go? Councilor McConnell?
I would just like to commend Anne and the staff on how well they work from home during all of this very difficult time. You guys are doing an awesome job, and I'm just really impressed.
Thank you, Councilor McConnell. I will say that I spend a lot of time with staff electronically and face to face, and I agree with you, Councilor McConnell. They do a great job to overcome the hurdles of communication and distance, and they're just so professional. And when you look at our project list and what this city does, I say it over and over again everywhere I can. This little town gets a lot done, and we're doing a whole lot of things, and it's because of our staff. They do a great job. Ann, did you have something? Okay. Anybody else? I'm going to close this meeting before 9 o'clock. It's 8:49. Thank you, counselors, for getting through this, and hopefully we'll be face to